Welcome to Click for IB Biology. We're studying topic D 3.1, reproduction. And now we're going on to our second video in which we're going to take a look at the structure of the gametes produced by meiosis in sexual reproduction and their position within the life cycle of the organism. There's a PDF of this presentation that's linked in to the description down below. You can download that, annotate that with your own notes, and then when complete, why not take the 10-question quiz, which is linked in there as well. 10 questions with answers, and you can use that to check your progress with this particular topic of gametes and life cycles. So the typical human sperm cell is about 50 micrometers long, of which the so-called tail structure, let's just characterize that like so. There's the head structure and the tail structure. So the tail structure is making up about 45 of those micrometers. So the head structure, as shown here in this diagram, is about 5 micrometers in length. The typical egg cell has a diameter of round about 120 to 100 micrometers, but is often surrounded by a cloud of what are called follicular cells, as shown in the image here, which makes the actual released egg cell appear larger. But the actual egg cell is in the center here. That's the oocyte, as it's known. There's the name there for the proper name for an egg cell, and this is the sperm cell over here. Let's take a closer look at the sperm cell. Within the structure, perhaps the most significant structure within the head of the sperm cell is the haploid nucleus. Of course, haploid meaning that it has one of each of the chromosomes of that species. So in particular for human beings, that would mean that it would have 23 of such chromosomes. And they're contained within the nucleus, within the head structure. Now, it's important to understand the sperm cell in its maturation began as perhaps having the general typical cell shape like this, but then it differentiates by elongating into the tail structure like so, and the tail structure is responsible for the mobility of the sperm cell, and indeed that's what characterizes male gametic cells. It is not a multicellular structure, it's a single cell structure differentiated into these 2 or 3 zones: the tail, the head structure, and some people refer to this region here as the neck of the sperm cell, which is very narrow. And that narrowing means that the tail structure with its many mitochondria is isolated from the head of the sperm cell. And this is important when we come to the fertilization process, so we'll refer to this later. The movement of sperm cells is due to protein fibers called tubulin, and these have a mechanism of contraction, creating a whip-like or spiraling type movement that propels the sperm cell forward in its mobile search for the egg cell. The arrangement of the protein molecules within this tubulin is in the classic so-called 9+2 structure of tubules, which, although not covered in this part of the syllabus, students may be interested to pursue that. At fertilization, please note that the fusion of this sperm cell does not release any of these mitochondria into the egg cell, so they're excluded by this neck-like feature between the head and the tail structure of the sperm cell. So 50 micrometers long, most of which is the tail. The oocyte on the other side is probably one of the largest cells within the human body. Based on the diameter of the cell, it's about 100 microns. Surrounded in the center here is the nucleus. Prior to fertilization, held at meiosis at metaphase 2. So the chromosomes in the center here are held at metaphase 2, and there will be present in the surrounding areas the so-called dipolar bodies, which are the discarded sets of chromosomes from the first meiotic division. We'll deal with this in another video as well. So we've got the nucleus in the center here with its haploid set of chromosomes, a single set of chromosomes. The surrounding structure around the outside of the egg, there are various features which are involved in the ensuring that only one sperm cell is capable of actively fertilizing this structure, including the cortical granules arranged around the outside, along with a structure known as the Zona Pellucida. But students should refer to the fertilization video in order to get more details on this particular feature. So the egg cell is very large, it's non-mobile. The sperm cells are very small. They are mobile due to the presence of these tubulin protein, whip-like protein molecules that can propel it forward. The male gamete contains, as I mentioned previously, a haploid number of chromosomes, as indeed does the female, and these are produced by meiosis. What will happen when the sperm cell fertilizes the egg cell, not drawn to scale here, of course, but when this happens, the nuclei of the sperm cell combines with the nuclei of the egg cell, and so in doing so, the chromosome number then is doubled, and of course we refer to that as the diploid state. I prefer to think of this in terms of the male cell has a single set of all human chromosomes, and the female gamete has a single set of all human chromosomes, and that the gamete produced by fertilization, which is described as diploid, given the symbol 2n, these of course are n, and that diploid actually means a double set of all chromosomes. And so in a human, that would mean a double set of all human chromosomes, shown here by the 2 copies of chromosome 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so forth, all the way through the human chromosomes, a double set. Within the human life cycle, the production of gametes occurs following what is called puberty, and this is studied in more detail on the higher level course with the secretion of hormones from the brain, which bring about the process of meiosis in the testes and meiosis in the ovary in order to produce the sperm cells and the egg cells. We'll take a look at the fertilization process and the restoring of the diploid number, and then the embryonic development of the single fertilized egg cell, the so-called zygote, divides by mitosis to produce the so-called blastocyst, and that will give rise to not only the embryonic, to the placenta structure, which comes from here, but also the embryo, which comes from this inner cell mass here, and that will then eventually give rise through embryonic development and fetal development to the child, and then that child is born only to then mature to puberty, and the cycle continues once more. So we'll be looking at each of these in more detail in the following videos. And the next video in this sequence is showing on the left hand side there. The playlist is on the right hand side. Chance to subscribe to the channel, always greatly appreciated that. In the center, thank you very much for listening to this video.